The question is that the motion be agreed to.
Race through that one.
I call the honourable member Jacinda Ardern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for outlining the rationale behind what is a bill with many elements to it, and which I hope the Social Service Select Committee will have enough time and space available for both ourselves and the public to give due consideration to the bill. I also want to acknowledge, Minister, that this has been a long process in reaching this final stage for this bill, beginning with the Green Paper. And it is correct that at the time that the Green Paper was first brought into the public domain, that it was Labour's view that enough evidence already existed around what we needed to do collectively to address the challenge of not only child protection issues but wider child wellbeing issues, Mr. Speaker. But there is no doubt that since the Green Paper process began, there has been unprecedented engagement by both the general public but also those who work in the children's sector more generally. And from the Green Paper process to the White Paper process, then finally through to the Action Plan, I think there have been two very clear messages that have come through. The first has been the desire that Parliament, but particularly the government, broaden its perspective around the issue of vulnerability. It is a plea that Labor has made continually, that if you want to look at well-being for children generally, if you want to take a preventative approach to child protection issues, we do need to look at issues like child poverty. It is one of the single biggest determinants for child wellbeing if you look at all of the research and evidence that exists. Now, there are small glimmers in this bill around the action plan that the Minister intends for government departments to come on board with, where we could use that action plan to ensure that a family's economic wellbeing is a key consideration for the government. I will come to that, but we must make sure that that is what happens, and at the moment it is a bit of an open question. So that would be Labour's first plea. Let's broaden the perspective we take on child wellbeing. Let's consider child poverty. Let's act on it. The second plea is that we agree with the Minister that we must work together. This was a strong message that the public want a cross-party approach that goes beyond electoral cycles when it comes to child protection issues. And I agree with the Minister. We should be able to take the politics out of it. It should come down to a simple matter of evidence base. In fact, that has been Labour's hope from the beginning. We made the offer to work collaboratively in October 2009. We made it again in July 2011. I made it again in January 2012. It's an offer I make again today. I have also responded to the Minister today on her broader question around the Children's Action Plan and, more specifically, the children's teams. Labor gives its pledge that in government we will continue with the broad framework that has been set out by the Minister. We maintain our right, however, to review the action plan based on evidence, continue what is working and revise what is not. We maintain our position that we have severe concerns with the risk predictor model and, as I have stated, that we wish to broaden generally the view of child wellbeing and be much more holistic. But we believe we would be doing a disservice to the sector and the public who have engaged in this process if we were to dump the plan as a whole. And there are good elements to this plan. We acknowledge that. And that is the pledge that Labor gives today to the sector and to the government. I want to go through some of the key elements of this particular bill, though, to highlight some of the areas that we will be looking at Select Committee. As the Minister has highlighted, one key element of this bill actually brings together something that Labour's been advocating for some time via our child poverty bill, and that is to have a cross-government plan for children's well-being. Probably where there is one main point of difference, though, Mr. Speaker, is that Labor wants to see government commit to targets to reduce child poverty. Now, at the moment, we have a general framework, but we have no specific targets. We think it's much easier to hold government to account, whichever party happens to be in government, if we're very specific about what we hope to achieve. So that's something that we will be asking questions over at Select Committee. We also want assurances from the government that the one note in the bill that the action plan, the vulnerable children's plan, can include improving children's economic and social well-being. We want to see what specifically that means and whether that means we will be looking directly at child poverty. Otherwise, this element of the bill very closely mirrors Labor's private members bill, which is in my name, and we're pleased to see that it's going to progress more quickly in this form. But like I say, we'll be seeking a bit more meat on the bones when it comes to that plan, which is a bit of a hollow plan at the moment. The second element of the bill is to require state services to have policies in place containing provisions on the identification and reporting of child abuse and neglect. This provision has been called pseudo-mandatory reporting. I understand the Minister's rationale for not going as far as having mandatory reporting. We ourselves have said that we think before mandatory reporting comes in place, you need to have two elements. You need to have appropriate training for frontline workers who are required to identify child abuse and neglect. Otherwise, you run the risk of over-reporting and, as a result, child, youth and family being overwhelmed with reports of child abuse that are either false reports or those most significant reports then getting swamped and not addressed in a timely manner. So we will be seeking at Select Committee some assurances, some evidence that training will be occurring, because it's not contained in this bill. The work that groups like Child Matters does should be happening across the board. If we're requiring some form of plan for reporting, we should be requiring that that training goes alongside it. We also want to ensure that SIFS is appropriately resourced to deal with any increase in reporting. At the moment, we have continually expressed, Mr. Speaker, our concern that they are under-resourced at present. That will be an issue that we continue to raise in this House and at Select Committee. The third element is the new standard safety checks for employees. There's a number of issues that we'd like to get into. I believe the Ministry of Education has been heavily involved in these provisions. One question I will raise now, though, is that why, alongside this, have we still not made the step of mandatory registration for social workers? Surely, if we're seeking these kind of safety checks for employees, surely we would finally take that step. Now, I know that the Registration Board has been seeking that move for some time. Labor has been seeking that move for some time. We will want to explore at Select Committee why we have not taken that step. Probably one of the most controversial elements of this bill, though, Mr. Speaker, is allowing for new civil orders, the child harm prevention orders. Labor has said from the outset, of course we want to support measures that protect children from harm, but we will be seeking the evidence at Select Committee that that is what these orders will do, particularly because this is such a significant change in the threshold around the burden required to impose a significant order. The regulatory impact statement by the Ministry of Justice tries to liken these orders to overseas jurisdictions, but in fact, very few, in fact, I haven't seen any evidence of any overseas jurisdiction who allow an order to be in place where there has not been a criminal conviction, Mr. Speaker. So that is a considerable change in threshold. We accept that the Minister is still setting a bar that has to be reached via the justice system, but still, it's on the balance of evidence rather than a criminal conviction that deserves significant scrutiny at Select Committee, and we've already expressed our concerns, and our spokesperson for Justice, Andrew Little, will speak further to that point in his contribution to this House. I want to commend the fact that the Minister has heard concerns about children in foster care and their need for care to go beyond the age of 17. That is something I absolutely agree with. I believe it should be legislated. I'd like to see how far that support will go. I believe it needs to go into pastoral care and not just financial care, and that's something that I look forward to discussing at Select Committee. Equally, there is merit in reversing the onus of proof where parents have already proven that they have failed at their responsibility to care for their current children, and when they look to have further children, I do believe there is justification in reversing the onus as the Minister has done. Overall, Mr. Speaker, As I've said, Labor supports measures that evidence show will protect children. We absolutely agree children need to be at the centre of everything we do. We will bring in a Minister for Children. We will have a Ministry for Children. We will give greater support to the Children's Commissioner to be independent, and we will make sure that children are indeed at the heart of everything we do, but we will also make sure that there is continuity of policy.
I call the Honourable Minister Judith